This video is brought to you by mybookie.ag. Make sure you use the promo code Weasel to double your first deposit all the way up to $1,000. What's up, guys? We are here for the UFC Fight Night card, headlined by Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko 2. It's been a long time since we saw a championship fight headline a Fight Night card. The results of my last predictions, I had 9 out of 12 correct, 3 out of 4 confident picks correct, which are anything 70% and higher. So if I think a fighter has a 70% chance or higher of winning, that is a confident pick. So the card has 11 total fights, a little bit under the average, and it's going to start at the usual time slot. Prelims start at 7 p.m. Eastern, and the main card starts at 10. So translate that to whatever time zone you're in. The card is not too bad. We have a title fight at the end, we have a good co-main event, and that's going to be a really interesting main event, as a lot of people do think that Shevchenko should be able to get her belt back. But Alexa Grasso got so much better to the point where she's able to fight with someone like Shevchenko, and I wouldn't be shocked at all if she's able to replicate it again. Holland versus Della Maddalena is a magnificent fight. That's one you absolutely don't want to miss. Raul Rosas Jr. is on the card versus Terrence Mitchell. I think that fight's going to be a lot more difficult than people anticipate, and a load of Mexican talent all throughout the card. Daniel Zellhuber is a huge lightweight, standing at 6'1". He has good patient striking, long and has decent power. Lupi Godinez is on the card. She's pretty good as well. Huge favorite going into it. Roman Kopylov is a very interesting talent. Go up against Josh Fremd. Tracy Cortez, huge fan of hers, but should be a competitive fight with Jasmine. And here are my picks for the whole card besides the featured fights I'm going to talk about. If you guys want me to talk about every single fight, even for fight nights, leave in the comments below. But I was thinking about doing it just for pay-per-view cards. As you can see, I have Zellhuber winning, I have Padilla winning, Godinez absolutely dominating, Kopylov doing really good too. I see Shira's dominating. I think Cortez might lose, but that's a very hard one to predict. That should be a close fight. I got Campbell, of course, he's a huge favorite going into it too. And I have Knudsen. Nuts on your face. No, I'm just kidding. The prospect of the night. It was really hard between a couple fighters here, but I'm ultimately going with Raul Rosas Jr. due to how young he is. He's only 18 years old. He has promising skill. He hasn't fully grown yet. We might see this guy up at featherweight. Decent wrestling, good Brazilian jiu-jitsu, unorthodox and creative on the feet, but I like to see him control himself a lot more. That's going to be a big thing going into his fight with Terrence Mitchell too, because Terrence Mitchell also doesn't have a lot of control when he's doing stuff out there too. Roman Kopylov is a good runner-up though, as is Daniel Zellhuber for the prospect of the night. The fighter of the night, I believe, is Valentina Shevchenko. She's one of the greatest of all time. A lot of people do believe that she's going to get her belt back. She's the biggest name on the card. Alexa Grasso is not a bad one to pick for fighter of the night as well, because she is the only Mexican champion right now. She has a whole country behind her. The stake of the night, the fighter that is in hot waters, is absolutely Daniel Lacerda. He's coming off a 4-fight loss streak, all of those by finish. He lost all of his fights in the UFC by finish. That is crazy. If he loses this one, that's probably it for him. The banger of the night, the most explosive fun fight on the card, is absolutely the co-main event. Holland versus Della Maddalena. I'm also going to choose that as fight of the night as well. A lot of skill, a lot of power, a lot of entertainment, excitement, huge knockout potential. That fight has everything you want on this card. And with that, let's go to our first featured fight. Raul Rosas Jr. versus Terrence Mitchell. Both guys pretty new to the UFC. Raul has a little bit more experience in the organization. Terrence Mitchell lost his UFC debut against Cameron Simon, which is not a bad fighter to lose to, because Cameron Simon is going to do great things in the future. That guy is so good, man. He's going to take a bit of a step down here fighting Rosas Jr. Look at the age gap. 18 years old versus 33. Terrence Mitchell is almost old enough to be this guy's dad. He's probably going to have more man strength in there. He's probably going to be a little bit stronger. He's definitely bigger. He's long and tall, standing at 5'10", but they do have a similar quality about each other. Both guys don't have a lot of great control when it comes to their styles. I think Raul actually has better control overall, as crazy as that is at his young age, because when you see Terrence Mitchell fight, he is blitzing you with everything he has. He extends fully into all of his punches to knock you out. He has quite a few good knockdowns prior to the UFC. Not the most technical striker in the world, but I do believe he's a little bit more technical than Raul. And even with his wrestling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's kind of similar to what he does in the stand-up. A lot of rushing, man. He rushes a lot with everything he does. And it'd be awesome to see him control himself a bit. If he blitzes in, gets the double leg like he did a Cameron Simon, he actually got a takedown against him but fell into a guillotine. If he measures things a bit more here, he should actually have a good chance of winning this fight, because his submissions are pretty nasty, man. He has a good armbar, he has a good triangle choke, and he has more power on the feet than Raul does. The thing about Raul though is, he is very aggressive, but he composes his wrestling skill a lot better than Terrence Mitchell does, even when things get chaotic. So I think if Terrence Mitchell rushes things, it's actually going to be to his detriment, because I think Raul will shoot under, take him to the ground, control him a little bit, trying to find some good shots to land and soften him up for a submission. I think that's a big reason as to why Raul Rosas Jr. is a massive favorite going into it. I think this all comes down to the approach of how these two fight. We have to also remember that Raul's coming off the only loss of his entire career, and at 18 years old, you know he's going to be soaking that up. You know he's been thinking about it. You know he got into the gym that next day trying to get better and right that wrong. When you're inexperienced and you lose, I believe it hits you harder, and it depends on how Raul is going to respond to that. Is it still in his head? Does it get his mind off the game? Does it take his focus off this fight? Or has that loss made him an even better fighter? A lot of that's going to come down to the good coaching that he has behind him, and if he does have that, I believe we're going to see a much better Raul Rosas Jr. in this fight. So I'm ultimately going to pick him. I am not too confident though. I know the odds have him as a minus 833, so even though I think Raul is going to win, I am definitely going to put something on Terrence Mitchell. There's nothing to lose with those odds. But I do think Raul Rosas Jr. should be able to get him to the ground with a counter double leg, eventually get his back and choke him out. I think Raul is going to take a similar approach to Cameron Simon. And then we go to the co-main event, the best fight on the card in my opinion. Two top 15 fighters, Kevin Holland versus Della Maddalena. These two guys have 24 knockouts in between each other. That is crazy, man. But look at the difference here. Kevin Holland has quite a few submission wins, and he just submitted Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa doesn't have the greatest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu defense, but the guy is a black belt on the ground nonetheless, and I believe he's better on the ground, much better on the ground than Della is. In Jack's last fight, he did not look that great. He made a lot of questionable decisions on going for guillotines. He got taken down multiple times in that fight. I don't expect Kevin Holland to do the same. I don't expect Holland to try to take the fight to the ground because he could have done that against Wonderboy and he chose not to. So I'm not going to expect him to do it against Della. It's going to hurt his chances of winning this fight a lot more because if he gets into a boxing match with this guy, he has a big chance of losing this. Della is technically a much better striker. He is so much skilled on the feet. He has a good guard, good pressure, not the best footwork overall, and I think that might be his biggest hole. It's going to be harder for him to get in on someone like Kevin Holland, who has an 8-inch reach advantage and is 4 inches taller. Kevin Holland is a sniper, very precise with that right hand. I could see him lining up that shot as Della is walking into him, and one shot from Kevin Holland could end this fight. I think punch for punch, Holland hits harder. It's crazy from that thin frame, right? He's pretty skinny, that he packs that much power. It's absurd. It reminds me of like a Tommy Hearns kind of build where you're really tall, really long, but skinny, and you can one-shot guys. So if Kevin Holland could keep Jack away from him enough to snipe him with the right hand, this fight can end at any moment because of that. And the guy has a very good chin as well. This guy's taken so much damage from the Wonderboy fight alone. Most guys would not have been able to take those strikes from Wonderboy, but this guy took it for almost 5 rounds until he couldn't take any more pain from his hand. Not even from his head. He had to stop because of his hand. But if Della is able to get on the inside of Kevin Holland, if he's able to hold his guard up, actually do something similar to what Sean Strickland showed against Adesanya, we're probably going to see a trend here now. These shorter guys with good boxing, walking in behind their defense against a longer sniper like Kevin Holland or Adesanya that fought Strickland, defend the shots, don't give too many openings against the feints, walk behind the jab, pressure them to the fence, and then unload on the inside or look to counter their big right hand, catch them clean with some good shots. I can see Della actually taking a similar approach to what Sean Strickland did against Adesanya. The only thing is, Kevin Holland is going to be a lot more willing to bang it out with you. He's gonna be a lot more willing to throw that right hand if you're walking into him. And he's extremely precise, so it's a scary fight to think about. If Kevin Holland would go for a takedown, I think he actually should win this fight. I think he should be able to take Jack to the ground. Even if he doesn't, push him up against the fence, land some good elbows there, exit off with good right hands, and eventually if he is able to take it to the ground, I could see him submitting Jack. Now both guys do have experience against a similar statured opponent, like Kevin Holland fought Santiago Ponzinibbio, who's around the same kind of build as Della. He's mostly a boxer, has a good jab, moves around a little bit more than Jack does, and has a very good low kick that you saw Jack use against Randy Brown for an example. Now with Della, we saw him fight Randy Brown, who's a very similar build to Kevin Holland. He's not as powerful, he's not as much of a sniper, he's not as precise, but he moves around, he's very long. Randy kept a jab on Jack. And what did Jack do? Jack was moving back a lot. He wasn't pressuring behind his guard as much up until the end, but before that he was moving away a lot, and that could be a bit of an issue. If he's doing that against Kevin Holland might be able to find the right hand on him. If Jack is moving forward, pressuring him, not giving Kevin Holland much space to work with, while keeping the guard up and parrying the jabs that he actually did very well against Randy Brown. Randy Brown has a very good jab and he was parrying a lot of those. If he's able to pressure forward like that and walk at Kevin Holland the way he did against Randy Brown at the end of the fight, things could get a lot more interesting. The only thing I didn't like about Della in that sequence where he dropped Randy Brown with the right hook was that he was so open before that. He opened up his guard, he was looking for the intercepting shot, and in that moment, if you guys watch that sequence again, I can absolutely see Kevin Holland catching him with the right hand at that moment. Because Randy Brown doesn't usually fight that way, whereas Kevin Holland, like I said before, will bang it out with you at times. He will be willing to take one to give you one, because he knows more often than not, he's going to win those trades. So ultimately, my prediction for this fight, my brain is telling me to pick Jack, because he is the better boxer, because he has the style to beat Kevin Holland. But I have a feeling Kevin's going to catch him. I have a feeling Jack is going to be winning the fight a bit, and then walks into a right hand. And not only that, in the Hafez fight, there were times where Jack had him up against the fence and was unloading with combinations to the body and to the head, and he was eating some big shots too. Hafez is not a knockout artist at all. If Kevin Holland has one of those land, if one of Kevin Holland's punches like that lands, that fight is over. So ultimately, my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Kevin Holland. I'm going to go with the underdog here. I think it's very, very close. This is a fight I probably would not bet on. Both guys can absolutely win this. This is a game of inches. One mistake from Jack and this fight is over for him. Whereas the other way around, Kevin has to find those openings. Jack's defense is pretty nice. Just sometimes Jack will open himself up when he's unloaded with combos or looking for his own openings. There's like a lapse in moments where his defense drops. And that's where Kevin Holland can catch him. So I'm ultimately going with Kevin Holland. I'm going to go by a second round TKO. And then we go to the main event. Alexa Grasso versus Valentina Shevchenko 2, the rematch. Both fighters are virtually identical in attributes. They're both 5'5", they both weigh around the same, I would guess. They both have the same reach. They're opposite stance fighters though. We're gonna see the same kind of thing happen where Alexa Grasso might switch into southpaw again. So even though Alexa Grasso is 90% of the time orthodox, she did change the southpaw against Valentina specifically, which is something you don't see happen too often, right? There's a couple examples here and there, like Yoel Romero fighting Luke Rockhold or him fighting Robert Whittaker the second time, but you don't see a lot of fighters switch into the opposite stance for most of their fight, and she might do the same thing again because there's an opening against Valentina Shevchenko's counter-striking style. She mainly throws a check right hook from southpaw. She leans away and throws a check hook. From there, Alexa Grasso was able to get in the very simple 1-2, straight punch beating looping punch. We're seeing that happen so often now, from Nate Diaz catching Leon Edwards to Kamaru Usman catching Jorge Masvidal to Alexa Grasso doing it against Valentina Shevchenko the entire time for their first fight. And now with Sean Strickland catching Israel Adesanya. The mistake that a lot of these counterpunchers are making is that they're trying to meet the straight with their hook. That's a very risky way to do it. The way that you're taught to do it in boxing is to make the straight punch miss first so you can check them with the hook. You're delivering your punch after they throw their straight. So you can slip parry, or if you can, lean away from the straight and then plant yourself with a hook, but that usually comes with good footwork. You usually want to move your feet away from the straight before you plant yourself with a hook, because the opponent that's throwing the straight is usually going to overextend for a split second. That's the moment where you catch them with your check hook. And that's something Valentina Shevchenko should be able to adjust with, but the thing is, she doesn't move that much usually, but she doesn't usually lose. So we might see a different approach from Valentina coming into this fight to implement something like that, because Alexa Grasso's main success in that fight outside of the rear naked choke at the end was catching her with the 1-2. I don't expect Valentina to switch into orthodox if she's doing the same thing, leaning back and throwing the hook, because Alexa Grasso is going to be more powerful from orthodox, because Alexa Grasso's natural stance is orthodox. She's going to pack a lot more power into that 1-2. I see Shevchenko probably kicking more from the outside and moving more than before. Not moving away like as if she's scared or something like that, but moving in angles, moving a little bit back away from the punches before she looks for the counter punches. But the biggest change I see from Valentina Shevchenko is she's going to shoot takedowns a lot earlier. She adjusted in that Grasso fight, finding success off of the takedowns, controlling the position, landing good ground and pound shots, trying to transition when she could, but didn't force the transitions. Valentina seems so strong on top too. And now Valentina knows if she gives up her back on the feet by spinning for a kick, Grasso is fast enough to not only see the spin and move accordingly to the other side toward the back, but also jump at the back in that split moment too. It was one of the fastest back takes I have ever seen, and Grasso can do that again. So Valentina should probably not be spinning at all. No spinning kicks, no spinning elbows, no spinning back fists. It's way too risky to do it against this fighter. She could do it against other fighters, but not this opponent. So I think Valentina's approach is going to be a lot simpler than before. She should be able to move her feet away from Alexa Grasso's combos before planting herself for the counter and shoot takedowns regularly from the beginning to the fight to the end, because we know Valentina has very good cardio. She can keep up that wrestling pace, I believe, for 5 rounds. And as for Grasso, I see her doing a similar thing to before, maybe even catching Valentina again with the same kind of punches. But at the end of the day, my prediction for this fight, I'm going to go with Valentina Shevchenko reclaiming her belt, mostly using her wrestling to win this fight, and I see her winning this by decision. I can see Grasso perhaps winning the 5th round, and as you can see, the betting odds has Valentina as a favorite. She's actually not a small favorite either, minus 175. That's nearly 2 to 1. And if you look at some of the interviews that she's been having, she seems not only focused, but she is not overlooking this fight even in what's the next day gonna look like. No, this is it for her. She sees Saturday as the last day of her life. That's a terrifying mentality to go up against. Does that mean Valentina's going to come out there emotional? I wouldn't think so. She doesn't strike me as a fighter that would do that. She seems very composed, very disciplined. She embodies the martial art spirit more than almost anybody else. So I don't expect her to be emotional going into the fight, but she might be a bit more aggressive than usual. Either that or she is keen on executing her game plan. So as you can see throughout the whole card, there's a lot of huge favorites. Minus 250s, minus 300s, minus 400s, minus 7, 800s. It's a pretty good one on the betting odds, man. You have to go to mybookie.ag to capitalize on these. These kind of cards don't come around too often, so you can go and bet on whatever fighter you want before the fight, but you can also capitalize on live bets. So while the fights are going on, you can see how it's playing out, wait for the first round to end, and then you can bet on it, seeing on who's winning this. So if you look at Sean Strickland in the last fight with Adesanya, he drops Adesanya in the first round. There's a lot of people that were confident that Strickland was going to win from there, right? They knew that Strickland had this in the bag after the knockdown, and that would be the time to bet on him because he was still an underdog going into the second round. So if you put something on Strickland at that point, you would have won big, man. I like to point out this example as it's the main time I did it. Alex Caceres versus Song Woo Choi. After the first round, Alex Caceres was a huge underdog going into the second, and I put some on him for the live betting and won huge on him. Live bets, in my opinion, are the best for people that understand the fighting game a lot better, as you can see how it's playing out before you bet on it. But whatever way you want to go about it, whatever strategy you have, plug in the promo code when you sign up with mybookie.ag and you make your first deposit, as MyBookie will double that first deposit all the way up to $1,000. So if you put $100, $200, they'll double whatever you put in there. It's going to come back with a rollback withdrawal requirement, and in order to activate this bonus, use the promo code WEASEL, that's WEASLE, as there's a lot of good fights to bet on this card, man. You do not want to miss this one. Starting with the main event, you got Valentina Shevchenko as the favorite going against Grasso. If you think she's going to get her belt back, those are really good odds to bet on because she's not a huge favorite. I thought she was going to be bigger than she is right now, but then again, if it shows that the new generation top fighter is above Shevchenko in this point, Grasso as an underdog is actually really good too. Della Maddalena is a favorite against Kevin Holland. This is a fight that's probably not the best to bet on, but the methods of victory is interesting. So not only do you just pick the winner of the fight, you could pick who wins by what method, knockout, submission, decision. And as you can see right here, Della to win by knockout is a plus 150. Either he wins like that or by decision. The reason why for decision is because Kevin Holland has a great chin. Now for Kevin Holland, you can see that plus 440 for a knockout and a plus 580 for a submission. Those are both important to look at. Looking at Raul Rosas Jr. versus Terrence Mitchell, Raul to win by submission is a minus 194. That's much less than his minus 833. So if you're going to pick him to win, it's probably not even worth it going on the minus 833 odds. Picking the method of victory is probably the best way to go about it. Even though it is riskier, the returns are much better. And you can see Terrence Mitchell to win by knockout is over a plus 800. That's most likely the way he would win this fight. But I would probably put something on Terrence Mitchell regardless. Those odds are crazy wide. I think the locks of the card are Lupita Godinez, Roman Kopylov, Edgar Shirez, Charlie Campbell, and Jocelyn Knudsen. I wouldn't be touching the main event too much. I wouldn't be touching the co-main event. I'd be choosing some of these fights on the prelims and early prelims. And I probably wouldn't touch the Tracy Cortez and Jasmine fight, as that is the most competitive fight on the whole card. Very hard to know who's going to win that. So make sure to visit mybookie.ag. Make sure you use the promo code for your first deposit. And that's ultimately the end of the predictions, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you did, make sure to give this a thumbs up. Enjoy my content. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to hit the bell for notifications. And I'll see you guys in the next video. I'm probably going to be talking about the straight punch being looping punch and how it works.